All right, everybody, welcome back to the Southern Ontario Dirt Show with Jonathon and Travis Cunningham. This is episode, I believe it's lucky number 7 for us, Travis.
Yep, lucky 7, definitely. Got an awesome guest lined up for this one. It's Joe Plazek, Canada Joe, and so I can't wait to talk to him. Got him lined up after we do our little
Very
thing
excited
here,
about
and
that.
very excited about it. Yeah, lots of stuff there. Gonna ask him lots of Super Dirt Week stuff and back in the day stuff, and you got some good questions lined up as well.
Yeah, and I wanted to start with, since we're starting locally, maybe start with, and this is episode 7, so what about lucky number 7? Cody McPherson in the Dirt Car Sportsman. He had himself a week this week. Picked up a win on Monday
Mm-hmm.
at Weed Sport. Then he goes on to win the feature at Merrittville on a Saturday night, and then Humberstone, and he wins the debut Sportsman race there for the season. So big weekend in the Sportsman's for past guest Cody McPherson.
Yeah, and I remember on our show he said how he just does the same thing every night. Well, I guess that same thing every night with the adjustments was working all 3 nights. Weedsport, Merrittville, and Humberstone. All 3 tracks were pretty. I think wasn't at Merrittville, but I know Weedsport and Humberstone were pretty slick come feature time, so pretty similar there. But I wasn't there Saturday. I'm not sure if it was slick or heavy or not. But yeah, Cody's definitely rolling, and I always wanted to watch around here.
Yeah, I felt like Saturday night at Maryville was actually a bit more of a tackier track. Like it definitely had some bite to it, and I think
Yeah, that's what I was hearing.
it was causing some problems. I think throughout the racing, but at the same time, I like seeing the drivers have to fight a little bit of a different condition. So I think it made for some decent racing throughout the middle of the pack, kind of thing. But definitely the guys who were hooked up were hooked up. But what about let's start with Friday night. So you were making your season debut at Ohsweken, which had a great opening night for their 2050th season. So first of all, Travis, let's talk about your night first. I know you probably don't want to talk about it too much, but let's talk about Friday for you. How did the run go? For those who don't know and didn't see.
Uh, Yeah, like I showed on Facebook, just made a mistake, clipped the inside wall, and I think it bent my left front wheel so bad that I couldn't steer it anymore. It made it feel like I lost steering, and then it kind of drifted toward the infield. And Holly Porter was there; she just had nowhere to go, clipped me, and yeah, definitely ruined her night and her car. My car was just bolt on shit, luckily, but yeah, I felt super bad for her and her team there. And but overall, the night at Ohsweken was awesome. They had big car counts in all the classes, lots of good racing. I didn't really see much of it because I was busy doing my own stuff. I know our class, while I was racing there, I was watching D-Dubs and Ryan Turner, 2 former guests as well, throw down for the lead. And I was pretty proud of myself being close enough to even watch that at that point. And then it started to fall back a little bit. I should have been on the top because that's where the line definitely was in 3 and 4. At the end of the race, Glenn Stiers had a good top a podium. He finished third. And yeah, Ryan Turner second, D-Dubs won. And I'm not really sure about the rest of those divisions, but I know Darren Dryden won the crate
Yep, he
over
did.
Jesse Costa because I was watching that. That was a good race. Dryden did a good job. I think that was a new car for him.
And Dave Bailey went
Yeah, it
to
definitely was because he wrecked at Humberstone last year.
Dave Bailey went
Yeah,
to victory lane in the
that's pretty
Thunderstocks.
predictable there.
Yep, him and Ryan Beagle started on the
Yep.
front row for the 20-lap main, and Bailey had himself a good weekend, which I think it was a first, a fifth, and a first. So I I feel like Bailey at some point we're going to be talking him pulling off a triple header sweep of the racetracks, but not quite there. One a little bit short on the Saturday night, and it was Tyler LaFontaine is also back in victory lane at Ohsweken in the mini stocks as well. So. A lot of familiar faces in victory lane at Ohsweken, not surprising. Um, and yeah, tough break for you. How hard was it to get yourself up off the bottom? Because I know we've talked about off the podcast and with your driving style, you really like the bottom, but you're saying Ohsweken it was
Yeah.
kind of you had to go up the racetrack and start to find that high groove. So when you're like that, how hard is it for you to make that commitment and jump off to somewhere else?
Uh, the only hard part, really, like I was just thinking about it when I clipped the inside wall, and then that was the end of that. I was going to go to the top next time in 3 and 4 because I was starting to see. My thing is usually I go for the bottom until they start passing me on the top, then you got to switch. But the hard part about switching is like you don't know if you're clear. Like you don't like you're on the bottom coming out too. If you want to go to the top in 3 and 4, you're like you can sometimes hear it. Like when Mac Demand was out there, I also had a good race going with him. I could hear him out there just gassing her up, and you know someone's there. But sometimes you just might not know if someone's not as hard on the gas and like you could drift up across, and that's the kind of, like you've seen that happen a lot where a guy thinks he's clear, he's not, and it causes a mess. And yeah, that's the only hard part is knowing if you're clear or not to cross the track and hit the top.
Fair enough. I mean, I would be so sketchy, especially in a sprint car, trying to have to just bail out and be like, nope, no longer want to run this lane. I'm gonna bail up to the top. I
Yeah, that's the thing about dirt. No radios, mirrors, nothing. Just feeling and hearing.
You gotta
So
clear
that's the
yourself,
hard part
right?
about dirt. That's what I love about it. That's my favorite part. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's my favorite part about dirt. No radios, no nothing.
It's just you and the car and the rest of the field. And the field at Merrittville, pretty solid lineup of pretty solid top five in the core pack merchandising 358s. But Matt Williamson goes on to win again over Pete McNell. Fast Freddie Carlton, Shane Pierce, and Gary Lindbergh rounded out the top five in the modifieds there. Uh, Taking a look at
Mm-hmm.
the
Good run for Shane.
yeah, he's again. We talked about him earlier in the year, and he said that he had speed in that car, and he felt like there was a lot of confidence. The last few weeks, kind of ran into some problems, and even in this race, I don't know. I don't think you've had a chance to see it yet, Travis, but the
I
finish
heard
line
about it.
run, the
I
finish
saw his
line run
post
that
on
Shane,
Facebook.
man, that was crazy. So it was three wide. It was Shane battling with I think it was Carlton that was down low, and the lap car of Glenn Cyrus was right in the middle. And Pierce goes and he just buzzes across the outside, just full send, trying to keep pace with Freddie. And they both had to split Styres. And then I don't think Pierce clipped a piece of Styres, but I think he just sent it so hard that he was like, all right, I'm going to have to go basically into the cornfield to stop this car now. And it was a wild ride for Shane. Glad he was all right. Glad it seemed like the car was okay, and still brings it home with a top five, but missed the podium by maybe inches over Fast Freddie Carlton.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, Shane. So if I have a little bite in the track, that's usually when he shines the most. He's always got speeds. Just sometimes, like I do it a lot too. Like the last couple laps is hard, and you give away a couple spots, and that third turns into a six real bad, and then it's kind of a kick in the butt. But yeah, Shane's always looked super quick, and good to see him bring home a good top five run this week.
and we talked about Cody McPherson in the Sportsman, wrapped up the win on Saturday night at Merrittville, but I also wanted to give a call to Taylor Van Der Zanden, who went from 17th to 4th, and Brent Bigelow, 16th to 3rd in the Sportsman. So, and the thing about the Sportsman
There
race,
you go.
it was pretty chaotic. So, good, give a call to both of those drivers who really showed a lot of patience and kept their nose clean and got through all of that, because it was a wild one. Four cars failed to finish, including some fast cars like Justin Sharp. Sharp, I think, I believe it was a left front suspension failure, which I don't know if that was necessarily contact with the driver, contact with the wall, or if it just broke on him. But yeah, it was definitely a bit of a battle of attrition, I think, in the Sportsman, and a battle to avoid getting caught up in other people's messes. So give a call to those guys. Big gains on the grid. Taking a look at the Hoosier stocks, Rob Murray finally back in victory lane. I feel like we've been waiting for this, or at least I've been waiting for this, covering Merrittville the last couple seasons. It's usually Dave Bailey versus Rob Murray. That's usually what I'm used to seeing. But Rob's had a tricky start to the year. I blew up a motor. I think the very first week has found himself in some accidents, but broke through finally on Saturday night. And Rob Murray wins it over Kyle Pelrine, Bryce Richardson with a great run, Zach Bleach, and Dave Bailey was fifth.
Yeah, so all four of the top four there sound like they had great runs. Ryan was second, you said, so that's an awesome run for him. And yeah, Murray always super fast. Been watching him win
Mm-hmm.
in Merrittville for well over a decade. And yeah, just struggling a little bit to start the year. Everyone was noticing, but we all knew he's more of a later in the year guy anyway, I think. He always turns it on, and then July he'll sweep the whole month. I've seen him do that a lot. Struggle with a little bit at the beginning, and then July, August, he cleans house and sweeps all the end of the year 1,000 win shows. Seen it before. So yeah, definitely not surprised to see him back in victory lane. But yeah, good shout out to the rest of the guys in the top five as they all had good top five runs. Except yeah, Bailey's the only one of the
Absolutely.
who is it? Bleach, Pellerine second.
Yeah, Bleach. I think that might have been Bleach's first top five of the year.
Yeah,
I'm
it's a
not
good run.
100% sure on that, but yeah, he had a very solid run after starting sixth, gained 2 spots, finished fourth. Bryce Richardson started from
That's the other one.
pole and showed a lot of speed towards the front of the field.
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
another one that always looks fast
yeah,
and
Bryce.
good to see him bringing home on the podium.
It was a pretty funny moment at one point. I think it was Teeple and Fontaine were both up there. I'm pretty sure it was during the feature. It might have been during the heat race as well. But at one point, I was calling a race, and it was the M1, the 11R, the 1J, the 11 of Teeple, and I think the 108. So there was just like every car had like a 1 in the number. And it was a bit chaotic for me to try to keep a hold of. But it was definitely a fun one to call. Brent Bigelow, I don't know. I don't want to call it a curse that we broke his streak after having him on and we were bragging about him having 3 modified light feature
Mm,
wins in a row. But yeah, car broke on him after he was out in front of this one.
oops.
Um, and Tyler Winger ends up winning his second of the year. So I believe the season series is 3 wins for Bigelow and 2 for Winger in the 5 races the modified lights have done. So
Yeah,
uh, yeah, I could give a call to Tyler Winger, who's just been opportunistic when Bigelow's not there to capitalize. It's been Tyler. So Sean F. Toddy with a great run in second, Jeffrey May third, and we also had the 4 cylinders. Another win for Tyler Alfonsi, who tried
shocking.
to make it 3 for 3, but came up a little short uh, the on the weekend at Humberstone. So let's start taking a look at Humberstone. Busy night for us. Back in the
Heck
booth
yeah.
together for the first time in a little while. That was a lot of fun.
Way too much fun. Uh, Good night at Humberstone for opening night. Yeah, had a blast, really.
Yeah, it was a busy one, but I honestly think it was maybe maybe one of the better races that I've had a chance to call, or racing nights I've had a chance to call at Humberstone. Good debut night, busy night
Definitely
with
no shortage of action.
yeah, for sure, right? With the six, um, what do we have? 6 classes going with the crate sprints going there. We were
Yep,
talking about it before the show. I think the crate sprints are running about 6 times at Humberstone this year, so uh, good to see them out there.
something
It's a
like
fun
that.
little track, tight track. Can we talk about turn one and two, by the way? Because that was such a problem corner for like it didn't matter what class of car you were running. That car that nobody could keep it on the banking. Which I did we not talk about that last podcast? I
That's
think
not
there
a
was
new problem at
yeah,
Humberstone.
right.
No,
You mentioned that. I'm pretty sure you were
it's
like
not even a
watch for
problem.
cars
It's
to
just you
fly
don't
off.
like. Yeah, it's just the way it's been, like the way it's always been. You've always seen a guy send it too hard into one, and there's like Merrittville. You've seen a lot of guys crash into those barriers, right? It's the
Hmm.
same kind of thing. Just there's no barrier. So at Humberstone, you can just keep wailing off into the pit entrance there and just enter back on the back straightaway. So it's definitely good there that you can just have a little bit more runoff space. But it's definitely deceiving with no wall there, I guess you could say. I think it looks both corners look like you can really sail it in there, but once you get halfway through, you realize, oh boy, yeah, couldn't little too hard there because it's just I think it flattens out in the middle or something. So yeah, it's just a little bit harder. 3 and 4 always hold the cushion, and it was on Sunday for the most part. 1 and 2 just always tough, blows off on that top side, and the bottom's usually the way. Like a good here's a trick on the starts at Humberstone. Just kind of if you're on the start and on the bottom, just don't go in all that hard and just wait for everyone to push up and
Hmm.
sweep by a couple. Usually works pretty good.
And then there was a lot of people who had the unfortunate luck of being like 2, 3, 4 rows back on the outside, and they just get caught up on things that maybe aren't even their own doing. That was kind of the story for a lot of the night. Like I feel like most of the cautions that we saw in turn one and two, that at least the multi-car
I
incidents were
remember.
exactly that, where it was like it was an accordion effect, right? Like a couple cars way back in the
Yeah.
pack just stacking into each other because there was just no room, and everybody's trying to make that corner. That was funny.
Well, the thing is, when it's like slick like that top to bottom, you can run all 3 lines, or at least try to. So then you got guys jamming her in there 3 wide or trying to, and then at that point, one little wiggle or something can cause a little mishap, and we saw a couple of them, but no big deal really. Just racing stuff. I don't think there was too much damage. I don't. The only damage I remember is Panaccio in the late model ripped his late nose off, couldn't run the feature, which was unfortunate at home. And but other than that, all the other stuff that kind of happened, I'm pretty sure all the other guys kept going, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I think yeah, that was I think those were
It
the
was
only
just little
like
stuff.
yeah, it just ended up being small ones, right? And everybody just a little bit of bumping, a little bit of stalling out, and that was that, thankfully. But um, the thing I was going to mention about Humberstone was Tyler LaFontaine was so close to winning that triple header between Friday, Saturday, and Sunday in a mini stock, and then just lap traffic got him in the end, and Jeremy Cooper driving the J Moulton 10 car goes around and steals one after some lap traffic got in the way. So bummer for Tyler, because definitely probably deserved to get the triple header win, which would have been a real cool thing for him to have happen. But uh, yeah, the rest of the field was Matt Williamson
Didn't the mini
won
stock
the
guy say
modified.
motor seized in Victory Lane?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Yeah, on the 10 of Molten, Cooper saying that I think it was as it was going
Yeah.
across the scales, it seized. So we were wondering. I was down there. I was wondering
Well,
what
good
so
thing he won
long
the.
it was taking so long to get out to Victory
Yeah.
Lane. I was like, "What's going on?" And then all of a sudden, I see the trucker, the tow truck, pushing him, this 10 car across the
Yeah.
field, and I was like, "Oh, yeah, that'll do it."
Good thing it was 1,000 win. He can hopefully that'll cover the new motor at the junkyard or wherever those guys get their motors. I think a lot of the guys in the VWs just go to the junkyard and put their own touches on them. Pretty sure that's TMR style.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
that sucks a little bit. But
yeah.
winning always
So
helps cure that.
yeah, so if you're looking for the results for Humberstone, they are not up just yet on the website, but I expect those to be updated soon. Um, and just in terms of who won, 358s went to Maddie. Sportsman went to Cody. We already mentioned that. Late models, Rob Lettingham. Crate sprints, Jacob Dykstra took that one home. Dave Bailey won in the street stocks and mini stocks. Like I said, Jeremy Cooper rounded out the night of winning on opening night at Humberstone.
Yeah, Mike Bowman did double duty. That was another story. And he finished third in the crates, fourth in the 358s.
Had a good drive back too, because remember he was in that very first incident in the crate sprints, and then kind of drove it all the way back through the field to finish in the top three. So
Yeah, nipped Neely at the line. Yeah, that was exciting. That finish for third there.
yeah, it was a good one. And we got some special guests coming up this week as we look ahead to racing action. On Friday night, APC Auto Parts Centers presents UMP Canadian Modifieds featuring NASCAR legend Ken Schrader, plus the 358 Modifieds. And we got the Thunder Stocks and Mini Stocks on Friday, which means a night off for you. So you get to be I don't know if the car's fixed up since the accident, but you get a little extra week of preparation on the car for you, and we get to watch a NASCAR legend come up and wheel him with some of our local heroes.
Yeah, he's gonna be running his UMP modified, and then on Friday he'll be running, I'm pretty sure, a brand new Glenn Steyer's 358 modified that we just finished up at BRP. Teddy finished putting her together. It's definitely
Nice.
one sexy piece, no doubt about it. And then Saturday night he's gonna be running the boss's backup, Pete Bicknell, at Merrittville. Like, I'm pretty sure you just said that, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, those are cars he's running Friday.
Yep. Yeah. Saturday night. Saturday night's going to be a busy one. Well, the whole weekend's going to be busy for Merrittville because we got the Monster Truck Show
Mm-hmm.
on Sunday, which is going to be accelerated by Hits FM. So I get to
Oh yeah,
have my other job at my other job. So kind of
you're
a
double
collision of
duty
worlds
Sunday.
for me between that. Kind of, yeah. Although the last time we had a monster truck show, they bring their own announcer, so I didn't really have to do much. And now that I've got William Morrison up there in the booth with me on Saturday nights at Merrittville, I can kind of hand off most of the duties, I think, to him, and maybe I can actually get to enjoy myself before
There you
heading
go.
down to Humberstone on Sunday.
Give that
That's
voice a
kind of what
rest.
I'm thinking.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly right. Van Sickle Pet Value PV on the Lane night on Saturday, though, before the Monster Truck Show at Merrittville. Action Sprint Tour coming out.
Yep.
358 modified, Dirt Car Sportsman, 4 cylinders, and we got a school bus race and one of my favorite events of the year in terms of off-track stuff at Merrittville, Best Appearing Dog Contest. So, uh,
Mm.
you know me, I love the dogs, and Van Sickle Pet Value does a lot for my Hits Hounds Adoptable Dog of the Week stuff that I do with Hits FM. So big shout out to them, and looking forward to seeing all the doggos at the racetrack.
Yep. That's one of my favorite nights too. It's definitely super cute and fun to see who all the crowd cheers for. I can't like, do they always cheer for the smallest dog or the biggest dog? I can't remember. It's always one of them.
See, I think there's a unfair advantage to any puppies. Any dog that's like under a year old and looks very
Correct.
obviously under a year old, they like pretty much automatically win. I feel like, right? So, although I don't know,
They should have their own category.
I've never brought my dog out, so I feel like Finnegan's gonna put up some tough competition. So,
Mm-hmm. So you're bringing the pup?
uh, that's the plan. Yeah, we're gonna. I might have my mom on standby because I'm between Kyra doing the scoring. My girlfriend Kyra is one of the
Yeah, that's
scorers
what
at
I was thinking.
Merrittville,
It's
and then
gonna
of
be a
course
little
I'm up
busy.
there. Yeah, so I was kind of like, oh, poor guy might not want to settle, especially hearing Dad yell all day long about race cars. So I might have my
Yeah,
mom on standby to take him home after the contest or something like that. But we'll see. We're gonna figure it out. So, and then of course we
that's cool
gotta
though.
look ahead to Maryville or look ahead to Humberstone, June 12th, 358 modifieds, sportsmen, street stocks, and then mini stocks in action. So, gonna be a busy week of racing wherever you want to be to catch racing in Southern Ontario. There is lots of motorsports happening all around the region, and can't wait to be a part of bringing it to you live. And of course, we'll be back here to talk all about it, and look forward to engaging with you guys as well at SODS_pod on Instagram and on Twitter. If you got tweets, if you got questions, if you got pictures that you think are cool to share, I always like seeing the quiet track photos, the Jeff Gluck inspired quiet track photo. That's one of my favorite things I see
My one
in
buddy does that.
racing social media.
Andy Bobandy.
Right? I think it's just such a cool picture,
Yeah, Andy Bobandy
especially
always
like
does good after
if you
track
get those
pictures.
tracks that are like blacked over. Yeah.
Yeah, he's on Josh. He's Josh Hansen's cousin, Andy. And yeah, we park next to each other
Yep.
this weekend now. So
Nice. All right. Well, I think that pretty much covers everything we got to get into in
yeah.
terms of teeing up the weekend, recapping what's going on. So why don't we go ahead and bring in our guest, Canada Joe Plazek. Hey, do you like what you're hearing? Want to support the Southern Ontario Dirt Show and help us expand our coverage across the province and Western New York? Well, your ad could be playing right here. Got a brand or business that deserves more attention? Email us, southernontariodirtshow@gmail.com to become a sponsor of the podcast. And now, let's get back to the show. Southern Ontario Dirt Show is back. It's Jonathon and Travis Cunningham, joined by Canada Joe Plazek. Thanks for coming on the show, Joe.
My pleasure.
You got a lot of stories to tell, a lot of history in the racing community, and I think we have to start from the beginning. So, how did you get into racing?
I started in, well, actually, my family was, dad and mom were really race oriented, and we went to a lot of the races around here, Speedway Park, Humberstone, Merrittville. Dad raced for a season in like a Thunderstock class. And then he worked for Bob Slack years ago, and Bob asked him to do the towing at Cuba Speedway with our yard truck, like our tow trucks from the yard. And we spent many Friday nights and many long weekends at Cuba Speedway, and that's pretty well that my introduction into it, and started from there.
All right, Joe. I know, like, for as far as your racing goes, I know like you started on asphalt first. I think Cayuga and mini stocks and stuff, and then transferred over into the dirt. Do you want to talk about a little bit of the asphalt stuff, and then the decision to do the switch over to the dirt side?
Well, yeah, we started in compacts at Cayuga and ran that a few seasons, and then we ended up with a late model car and ran a season with a late model car. Um, then I ended up getting out of it for I believe it was a year or so, maybe a little more. I did some other activities, and we ended up coming back. A partner that I met up with at work, he actually worked for us. We partnered up in a race team, and we decided to go to an asphalt modified mini, and we ran that. He had a dirt car that he owned, and had another fellow drive it prior to me, and it just kind of sat while we had the modified mini. Well, we decided that we would prep that car for my dad, because my dad had been a dirt racer, and take it to Humberstone and let him play a little bit. And it ended up that he had a couple weeks in it, and then they were at a ball tournament quite a ways away with my brother, and they called back and said, "We're not going to make it home. If you want to take the car and run Humberstone, feel free." So I had ran asphalt on Saturday night, and we said, "Why not?" Right? We took the car to Humberstone, and I tried it, and he never got the car back. I ran it from there. I had so much fun with the dirt that I did still run asphalt. So we did Saturday nights on the modified mini tour, and then we did Sunday nights at Humberstone with the car.
That's an awesome story.
And did you find it difficult, like racing two different surfaces in the same weekend? Was that kind of like hard on your head, or was it just it's like easy for you to do?
Yeah, I never found it hard at all. Everybody always said to me, how do you run asphalt Saturday nights and dirt on Sunday nights?" And I said, "Well, how do you drive down a snowy road in January, and then how do you drive down a hot asphalt road in July?" And they went, "Well, it's two different things." And I go, "Exactly. You just drive different, right?"
Yeah,
Yeah, it's like,
that's a good
well,
analogy.
it's pretty simple, right? And there's a lot of guys I know over the years, and these were good racers, and some of them just said they couldn't make the transition, and I found it really hard to believe, but I found it really easy for me. So, and there's a lot of other guys that did the same thing, right? If you look back in time, there was a lot of guys that ran dirt and asphalt.
Yeah, especially back in like the 70s days, late 60s and stuff like that. Lots of guys like, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Like a lot of the names you look at, you'll see, Lancaster, and then you'll see they ran, Speedway Park on the dirt. It's like it wasn't a big deal back then.
Yep, agreed. So then at some point you decided to go just the dirt route. So talk about like like did you do all three tracks back then, or talk about like when you switched right to dirt and the local tracks you ran for a while?
At the end of '82, we sold the modified Mini, and we really didn't have a good sale for the dirt car because the dirt car wasn't a real good car. But we ended up. I went to Junior Hanley and asked him, what I should do about it if I wanted to get a dirt car. And Junior said I wouldn't do anything other than talk to Maynard Troyer. And he actually set the deal up, and he called Maynard. Maynard said, "Yeah, I got one here." So I went one December morning from here to Rochester to Maynard's shop and picked up an 80. Well, it was an 80. It was 80 in '82, but it was an '83 Troyer mud bus, and the rest is history.
And then a little later on, we start to see you really make a name for yourself. I get at Super Dirt Week and winning not just like the Super Dirt Week pole. And I wanted to ask you about what it's like to set a fast time and how difficult that was. Obviously, the race is its own beast, but what does it take in a dirt car to just set one particular super fast lap like you were able to do back in 1997 and in 1993? I guess it was too. You won your Dirt Week pole as well, right?
'93 was pole. Yeah, we were pole and outside pole there for like a 3 or 4 year span. Um, Syracuse became an obsession. Really, I was a love hate relationship with Syracuse. I really had an obsession to go good there and to run well, but I hated the place as far as racing and the pressure it put on me. It was sometimes it was just overwhelming. But we just ran okay there when we first went, but I mean the place is so daunting that you just the nerves, everything. You really can't explain exactly what goes through your mind, but as you run there more and we just developed a good system there, and we ended up it's a culmination of a whole bunch of things that goes into Syracuse. I mean, it was starting in November when we shut down in Orange County. You'd start in November and start preparing for Syracuse in October, and the teams that did that, you could see it, and the teams that didn't do it, you could see it also. And there was a lot of good guys there, and there was a lot of good equipment, but the preparation was our deal, and we just kept drilling away at it till it got better and better. And your question to setting a pole lap a fast lap at Syracuse. Um, Again, it's just a culmination of things. You need a really, really good motor. You needed a good setup, and you know, we just had a knack for running alone out there and setting fast times. And one of the big things I used to laugh about is my dad was always our spotter in the grandstand, and I'd go out for hot laps early in the morning on like Wednesday, and he'd come on and say, you better pick it up because you're not fast enough. And I went, we're fine. Like I knew the car was good. I could feel it. But there were so many guys that would wreck their cars early in the day on Wednesday, and I just didn't want to be one of those guys. So
Hmm.
I made sure the car was good, and then when it came to the qualifying laps, you had to draw a good position to qualify. Late was always better. And the real test came when we did this a couple of years in a row. We sat on the pole in 93, and I think we were second day fast time. So when they invert the field and you go out early on Thursday morning, you had to have your stuff together to set fast time that day, that early in the day too, and or you could take a lap at the end. Sometimes we did that too, just one lap. And if you take one lap, you've got to really push.
And that's something I find just so fascinating in terms of the dirt world. You don't really think about fast times when you're seeing weekly racing at Merrittville Speedway when pole position is drawn out of a hat sometimes, or it's calculated by handicapping. But the ability to just go out and turn that one lap, like you say, there's so much that goes into it. I thought that was so fascinating.
Yeah, it's a lot of it's hard to explain, but like it's definitely you got to build yourself up to it. It's something that you just don't do overnight. And Syracuse just became, the problem is when you first go out there, you're shaken, you're nervous, you're not really, I mean, the track's dictating what it's going to do to you, kind of thing. And then as you got more comfortable there, I was actually at points in time in qualifying, going down the backstretch, going like go like harder, like just this thing's got to go faster,
Yeah.
right? It's so yeah, it does change, right? And even we had really really good motors, you still had to go down that straightaway, to tick off the thousandths of a second to because I mean sometimes there you were like the top 30 guys were broken up by like 1 second, like and so it really made a big difference, thousandths of a second, right? So the biggest, and
Wild.
I don't know what year it was, but the biggest hats off to our whole operation was one year we always entered two cars for the big block time trials, and we were pole and outside pole with two cars. So there was no doubt that
Mm-hmm.
we were a fast car there.
Okay, Joe. So a couple of my favorite Super Dirt Week things with you. There's gonna be a lot of Super Dirt Week stuff, just FYI. But so like you still have a rule in the dirt car rule book that's pretty much after you. It says 24 U.S. gallons. So I just want to hear like the story about that and like what Bob Deeney saw. Like tell me what he said and all the whole story. Give me that.
Well, that all started with my crew chief at the time was Kent Peckham, rest in peace. Really good guy. I mean, just awesome crew chief. And we were sitting at my dinner table. He was, he come over and had dinner with us that night. And my father-in-law was there, which, he knew very little about racing and race cars. And we were talking about fuel mileage at Syracuse and he come up and said, why don't you go imperial gallons? And we looked at one another, we're like, be quiet, like you can't do that, right? And after supper was over, Kent pulled me aside and said, you know what, he's on to something. Why you're Canadian? Why don't we go imperial gallons? And I went, yeah. Look, he says, call ATL in the morning and see if they'll build you an imperial gallon cell. So I was on an ATL deal and I called them and they said, I'll build you anything you want. And I was like, okay. So, we give them the measurements and they build a 22 imperial gallon cell, which comes out to about 24 and change, 25 almost US gallons. Because the rule book definitely said you had to run a 22 gallon cell. It didn't specify imperial, liters, gallons, US gallons. It didn't say. So we had cells in all the cars that were 25, probably 25 US, I guess. And we ran the small block race on Saturday and should have won that, but that's another story. We were second, and I went to Rolling Wheels to run the Rolling Wheels show. When I get back to Syracuse that night, about 11:30, 12 o'clock, my brother had been through tech, and he said to me, he said, we got a problem. And I said, what's the problem? He didn't even know. We did. Nobody in the team knew this whole deal, right? So Kent and me were the only two that knew. So I said, what's the problem? He goes, cell's too big. I said, what do you mean the cell's too big? He goes, cell's too big. I said, it can't be too big. I said, how big is it? He goes, I don't know. He said, you got to go see Denny in the morning. I said, I'll go see him. So soon as I got over to the pits on Sunday morning, I went to see Bob, and I said, yeah, what's going on? He goes, your cell's too big. I said, how big is it? He goes, well, I don't know, it's too big. I said, well, let's get the rule book out. And how much does it hold? He goes, I don't know how much it holds. I said, okay, so what's the rule book say? It says you got to use a 22-gallon cell. And I said, okay, Bob, 22 gallons, like U.S. gallons, imperial gallons. What are you talking? I said, if you give me a spoiler height, you can't say the spoiler can be 32 off the ground. You got to give me 32 inches, centimeters, millimeters, whatever you want.
Yep.
He just looked at me, and he looked at the pit steward and said, pay him. And that was it. So they paid me for the small block race, and then he pulls me aside and says, what are we going to do about the big block car? He said, I know you got those cells in the big block car. And I said, what do you mean? He goes, well, what are we going to do about this? And I said, well, that's up to you. You're the tech guy. And he goes, I'll tell you what. He said, if you're in tech, if you're in the, well, no, he said, when you're in tech today. And I said, how do you know I'm going to be in tech today? He goes, you'll be in tech today. He said, make sure I measure the cell. I said, okay. So we should have won that race, and that's another story. We were fourth, and we got to tech, and the guys, tear the back of the car off. We got to measure the cell. I said, well, hang on. Bob said that he looks after the measurement of the cell. They all look at me like they have no idea what I'm talking about. You go, okay. So they go get Bob. He comes over, measures the cell. Yep, he's good. So that's where the rule came in. And I get Gary Tompkins all the time on Facebook calling it the Joe Plazek cell rule. They allow him now 24 U.S. gallons. That still stands today, and I'm proud of it. I guess I don't know. It was a loophole in the rule book. Some people say you
Gray
cheated.
area,
No,
yeah.
I didn't cheat.
Not cheating.
I didn't cheat.
Nope.
No, it was. We read the rule book the way that we wanted to read it, and it didn't specify what we were supposed to. It didn't specify the measurement of what they were talking about.
Yeah, like you said, it would have been like them putting a spoiler height with centimeter, like without putting inches or centimeters. Same thing.
So as soon as I said that to him, he just looked at me and said, pay him, and that was it. And till this day, and it's funny because Bob and me are still, and we're good friends. We still go back and forth on Facebook, and it was his birthday, I think. I mean, I don't know when it was, back in the wintertime. I was snowmobiling, and I said, happy birthday, Bob. I said, do me a favor, would you like to tech my sled? And he said, no need. He said, no need to tech it, Joe. I know it's illegal.
That's awesome.
So we have fun.
All right, Joe. So you also just said a couple times a small block race got away there. I wasn't going to ask about it, but since you asked about it twice, why don't you tell that story?
I got too many.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, we had a real fast small block car that year, and we felt we could win the race. And lo and behold, I think we were the fast time, and then they redrew, I think, for starting positions, and we drew the pole. So, which you could have started anywhere from pole to 12th, I think, but we ended up starting on the pole. So Kent and me got together, and we said, if we pit, there was a mandatory stop, had to be after 30. So where our truck's at, we usually pitted right in front of the tractor trailer down by the tote board, and we were by the start finish line. So we said, if we cross the start finish line, the first car on the lead lap, that's, will it score us? Will that be our lap 30? And we said, well, you know what? We got to ask dirt, right? So we went to dirt and said, if we're leading the race and we come in under green and come down the center track and go by the start finish line and go to our truck to pit, will the flop clock go 30? And they said, yeah, absolutely. You're the leader. It's gonna score you as a leader no matter whether you're on the track or on the center track. We're like, beautiful. Okay, so this is the plan, and we kept it really tight so it didn't get out. But we're going to get the lead. We're going to get a big lead. As I'm going to run the car as hard as I can. And on lap 30, when we're on lap 29 coming to 30, we're going to come in on the center track under green, come down, hit the thing with fuel, go back out, and we will pick up the we won't go a lap down. We didn't feel like we would. And, when they go caution, whenever that may be, the whole field's coming in to make their mandatory. We're going to get the lead back. There might be 4 or 5 cars that stay out, but we're going to definitely be in the lead by guys having to pit. So the plan went perfect, except for we gave my dad the job in the grandstand of counting the laps, and he was counting the laps perfectly, my guy said, up until he got to 25, and then he really got excited and he got all screwed up, and he actually called me in on 29, and this was 28 going to 29. So he's like, bring it in. And, I can't see anything. I have no idea. So I'm on the center track. I come down, we make the stop, we go back out. Everybody's cheering on the radio. I run about, 10 laps or so. The caution comes out. I get up to about third or fourth. Kent comes on the radio and says, we got a problem. I'm like, what's the problem? And he said, Dirt's telling me you didn't make your mandatory stop. And I go crazy. Like, I'm screaming I said, like, we asked them, like, they can't do this to us. Right. And he's like, look at, he was great. He talked me down. He settled me down. He said, we can still win it. He said, let's do it all over again. He said, get the lead, when these guys pick, get the lead or pass them and run away with this thing. He said, and let's do another green flag stop. And we did it. And we got back to, like, I think we come out like in the top 10. We raced back to second. I couldn't get Kenny Tremont. He was just too good, too late. We were just out of time. And we ended up second in the race. And I still thought that Dirt got us, right? So I take the car to Tech, and I get in the car, and I'm just steaming, right? Well, Ken has to pull me aside, and he says to me, he goes, it wasn't Dirt. And I go, what do you mean it wasn't Dirt? He goes, it was your dad. Your dad got all, he got all messed up in counting and called you in 1 lap too early. So then I go off again.
Yeah, no doubt.
How could he do that? How could he do this? Anyway, it's still today. It's still today. We laugh about it. He barely felt bad, and I said, Dad, if I had never made a mistake in a race car, you could be on the hook for this. But I said, I've made them too, so don't worry about it. It happened, right? But we never got that one back. It got away. We never got it back.
So I wanted to talk about your track championships back in 1995, track championship at Cayuga County Fair Speedway, and of course back-to-back championships 96, 97 at Canandaigua. So what? First of all,
there was a Ransomville.
Yeah, that you split with Danny Johnson, right?
Tiebreaker with Danny Johnson,
Yep.
right?
Yeah. Can you believe that?
Yeah.
2 idiots run all year and tie.
It's happened a lot there.
So
Danny was so tough.
Yeah, I was gonna say to end up in a tie with somebody. How grueling these seasons are to come down to so close and end up in a tie. Like, that must have just been. Was it heartbreaking, or was it more of like just a confusing thing especially after winning individual track championships?
Well, the problem was I didn't really know the last race what happened, and I don't even know how the last race went, who finished where. So when the dust was settling, they just come over and said, you and Danny are tied. And I just sat there like speechless, right? It was like, how can this happen? Like race all year and tie, right? But you know what? It's still, all these stories all culminate to the same thing, as they're good history stuff, right? And if this stuff didn't happen, the story wouldn't be as good. But anyway, championships, yeah. I mean, it was always my goal to win a championship in the U.S. because I don't figure a Canadian can really be worth his salt unless he wins a championship in the U.S. And people came to me over the years and say, this guy's really good, and I'd say, is he winning in the U.S.? And they'd say, well, no, not yet. Well, okay, talk to me when he's winning in the U.S., right? Because I don't believe that you've got to travel. When I first got into this and started, in 83, well, it was about 84, I guess, when Mike Hillman Sr., there's a name for you, was my crew chief. He said to me, if you want to be good at this deal, you're going to have to travel. And in those days, we didn't have the haulers. We didn't have I had a cube van with an open trailer, and I mean these were pretty big travels, right? Like nowadays, with toter homes and nice enclosed and stuff, it's not as big a deal. I mean, still lots of road miles, but in those days, the trucks they weren't meant for it. The trailers weren't meant for it, and we did it. I mean, it was like Lebanon Valley, Fonda, Malta. There was a whole bunch. Quebec. We did Quebec. But that was always my goal, to win a championship down there. And I mean, my goal was to win a school Super Dirt Series championship or something. But they're very grueling. So I mean, I guess to settle for Wheat Sport, Canandaigua a couple times, Ransomville. We can hang our hat on that and say we got the championships. Maybe we didn't get the overalls, but we got the track championships, the regular championships.
Yeah, definitely nothing to be ashamed of there to not get close to the Super Dirts. But I want to talk about Canandaigua. It's well known that you and Bob McCready are still great friends. And so just talk about racing with Bob and being friends with him. I know you and Hugh are still talking on Facebook. I see you guys talking all the time. So just talk about Bob and racing against him and racing at the Land of Legends.
Well, Bob was the guy. I mean, between Alan and Bob, they were the guys to beat back then. And I mean, there was a lot of them, but they were the main guys. I mean, I think somebody posted a finish from July '85 on Facebook the other day. Fellow of the States, and I grabbed it and I think I put it on Twitter, and I was like, this was a regular Saturday night. And I mean, the top 10 was like, I'll go back and, Will Cagle, Charlie Rudolph, Alan Johnson, Danny Johnson, Bob McCready, Joe Plazek. I mean, this top 10 was like a Skull Super Dirt Series race, right? So,
yeah.
But Bob and Alan were definitely the guys. And my goal was to always, try to run with those guys. And we started to run a lot of, third, fourth. We'd eke out a second. It was tough. It was a very tough place to win at because those guys were just so good. Like I always think back and go, if I didn't have to race against those guys week in and week out, how many wins would we have had, right? But I always say on the other case, it made us better. Like we had to strive to be better, to beat those guys. And when we started to get close, I got to say one thing about Bob. He's just a diplomat. Like I don't know if he ever knew that I'd get to the point where I got to, but he helped me out a lot. And, he wouldn't tell you exactly what was going on, but, he would give you enough that you had to figure it out. And I think that was the big thing too, is he'd give you enough that if you figured it out, he sat back and just chuckled, right? Like, and our biggest accolade was when we won the championship in '96. Bob came over after the races and he said, hey, you guys come in the trailer, right? He pulled all my guys into the hauler and he said, he just congratulated us all. Just him, just my guys, and in a closed hauler, right? So it was really something that, and that still sticks with all those guys. We've talked about it after the fact that, what a diplomat to do that. I mean, most guys would have gotten their hauler and took off mad but not him. He was actually proud that we figured it out and we got to the point where we got to. So, very, very good memories.
I like that you say that he'd like just steer you in the right direction. That's what most veterans do, right? They won't tell you everything.
He got us. Yeah, he got us to the point where he gave us enough that here, I'll give you this much, but you got to figure the rest out. And it took a lot. I mean, it wasn't an easy thing to figure out, but and that's why I look at it now and I shake my head now because it's gone a whole other transition with these, spring smashers and guys doing the coil deals and putting them in and not even weighing, they'll not have scale in the cars and all this stuff. And I just go, whoa, like I'm glad I did it when I did it.
Well, it's funny. So you talk about how Bob treated you guys down racing in the States, and I kind of wanted to ask, being kind of this Canadian racer invading down in the States, it's pretty regular for the Matt Williamsons of the world, just as recent as Cody McPherson winning on Monday night at Weed Sport last Monday. What about for you? Did you face any kind of animosity being this Canadian driver invading in the States? Were there guys who were like, what is this guy doing down here? Why is he not back up in the Great White North?
I think the biggest animosity I faced was from the competitors, and it wasn't the Bob McCree's, the Alan Johnsons, the Dane Johnsons. It was more the 8th through 18th guys. Um, and that was basically our demise with dirt was those guys. I think just did enough complaining that tech started to come down on us harder than anybody else because they just kept beating on it. And I think I was an easy scapegoat because being Canadian, I mean, you're not different, but you do come from a different country, right? So you can't deny that. And yeah, there was some animosity there with the racers. The fans never, and I'm not saying all fans. I mean, when we started getting booed at Canandaigua after we won a feature, that's when I knew we'd made it.
Bingo.
Right? Like, yeah, like you get out in the front stretch and you hear all the boos. We won 8 races in '97 at Canandaigua. I mean, I think they only ran 12 races, right, on Saturday night. So, I mean, we won 3/4 of the Saturday nights there. So when you start doing that, it becomes boring for the fans, and they do start booing. But I knew then that I took it as a compliment. It's like you just grin when you hear it, right? It's so, you know what? Yeah, there was some animosity across the board, but I mean, it made us better. And like I said, some of it was complimentary. Um, Most of it was complimentary, I should say.
All right, the only other thing I got for you is you had a famous car. I forget the name of it, but you guys built your own car with like cantilever front end and everything. Just what was the name of that car again?
That was called the LTR, and it was acronym for Long Track Racer. And that's the only, and I don't even know why but that stuck. And we had 2 famous cars actually. We had the Rusty Nail, which was a car that Troyer built for us for, I'm going to say, the end of '94 season, just the fall of '94, and they built it so fast that we didn't have time to paint the frame. Like it come off the jig. They were putting stuff on it. I think we made the Canandaigua 200. It was that weekend, and we had wanted it ready for that. And well, that car rusted up pretty good. Like the frame was rusty brown, and we didn't paint it for a season, and it became the Rusty Nail. The LTR car was a car that we developed here at the Plazek Racing Shops from the ground up. I mean, 2-piece of 2x4 on the plate, and a lot of ideas went into that car. And it was for Syracuse. It never ran a short track. I would have liked to try it on a short track, so I think it would have been fine. But and all we did was everybody thought the car was really trick. I mean, it wasn't a Batmobile like like the Baloo thing. It was just what we did was we just tried to get the car really really easy to drive, and we lengthened everything. Everything was longer. It was maximum wheelbase. It was maximum width. It was we had 2 drag links in the steering so that the roll steer, there was no bump steer in the car, and we just made it so, and everybody thought the car was really really trick. We gave them that perception because everywhere it went, it was covered up, right? It was canvassed everywhere, but that was only just a diversion to keep everybody guessing. The car really wasn't that awful trick. Yes, it had cantilevers. That was to keep the shocks and springs out of the wind. Everything was inboard, but really the car was just so easy to drive, and uh, that car, when I said prior, like earlier in this interview, that in '96 we should have won that race. That's another story. Well, that car was on rails, and that car was definitely destined to win that race. We dropped a valve about lap 80, and believe it or not, the valve head broke, and the piston jammed it up into the port, and it stuck in the port for the rest of the day. And I radioed in and said, we're running on like I had to be careful because everybody's listening to our radio. So I'm leading the race, and I radio in and said, when I make my pit, just jump under this thing, put a stand under it. I said, I don't want anybody hurt, but put a stand under, jump under, make sure all the plug wires are on. I said, I got to skip. And so we came in, we made the pit, 2 tires, fuel. They checked the plug wires. I went back out. They radioed me and said, plug wires are fine. I went, it's going to be a long day, boys. We ran the wheels off the car, and that was the 4th place that when Denny checked the cell, that was the car with and you should have seen the faces in tech when they pulled that head and the valve was stuck up in the port sideways, right?
No doubt. That's even, yeah.
Nobody could believe it. Like they went, you had 7 cylinders. I went, yeah, I did have 7 cylinders. But the car was so fast in the corners, it just had very little straightaway speed. The guys would be bumping me, running over me on the straight, but then I would go back by them in the corner. Right? And when you start playing that game at Syracuse, I'm surprised we finished, right? It's like, it's like you're
Yeah.
gonna get punted sooner or later, right? It's but we didn't. We hung in there and got 4th out of it. So that's a good LTR story, good engine story, and all of it's true. Yeah, there's nothing made up in that.
Awesome. Well, we'll get you out of here on this one, Joe. This one's not dirt racing related, but it's one from my childhood. So I wondered if you had a favorite memory of driving the PlayStation car in Cascar.
Yeah, I mean we we had a good run in that deal. Damon Sharp's a smart dude. I mean, I don't know if you guys know that name or not, but he was crew chief for Pete Gibbons for years, and Jason Sharp was our guy that put the PlayStation deal together for us. And Damon was available to crew chief me. He wasn't working for Peter at the time, and we just didn't come to terms on him being my crew chief for the year. And I wish now, hindsight being 2020, I should have gobbled him up, and he should have been. But he did set my cars up, and we had him come to the shop, set the cars up, and believe it or not, he set the cars up for Calgary and for Vancouver. So Vancouver road course, oval track at Calgary. We hauled all the way out there. We unloaded the car in Calgary. The car was awesome as far as I was concerned. I went out there and I thought this car is handled like I've never had the car handle so good. They come on the radio and said, "How you feel?" I said, "I feel great." And they said, "Well, you better pick it up. You're a second off." And I said, "No, I can't. I can't be. I can't be. Like this car feels like it's on rails." Well, that was my first lesson in when you get NASCAR guys that come on and say, "I've got a car for the long run, but I haven't got a car for the short run." I never knew what that meant. Well, I learned that day what that meant because we qualified like 30th or 31st for that race on Sunday at Calgary. And we were so worried about getting a lap down. They threw the green, and I kept telling the guys, talk to me on the radio. And they were talking to me and telling me, and then all of a sudden they stopped talking to me. And I'm still running the car and I can't understand what's going on. And finally we get a caution, and I come on and said, like, you guys stop talking. Where are the leaders? And where were the leaders? And they said, don't worry about the leaders. You're faster than the leaders right now. And we had worked our way up to like 15th or something from 30th. And then the next thing you know, through pit stops, we were 10th. We're in the top 5. And we actually took the lead, I think, on lap 175 or 180. And it was a 300. And we led for, I don't know, 25 or 30 laps. And then finally there was a caution, and they said, you're going to have to come in and get fuel. Like sooner or later. I said, what about tires? They said, yeah, we were going to have to take tires too. So we brought it in, I think, around 200 and something, and took fuel and with the lead, took fuel and tires, and went back out, and we just didn't get the same. And there's another thing I learned, the NASCAR guys say, we didn't get a good set of tires. We just didn't get a good set of tires. Yeah, we just didn't get a good set of tires. We ended up 5th, I think. But we had a car, so that's my most memorable. We had a car good enough to win that. And I mean, that would have been the icing on the cake of the whole Cascar deal if we just had got one win out of that whole season. But we did win Rookie of the Year against Cole Pern. I'll add that, which that name, I mean, if I had won it against anybody else, nobody even recognized the name probably. But Cole was, quite a bit younger than me, and he was a good runner. But we ended up eking it out and won the Rookie of the Year in Cascar. And then PlayStation didn't come back, and They were taking their money elsewhere. It wasn't racing. They were going to spend it on some arcade or something. I don't know. And we just said, you know what? Unless we can get something else, we're not going back. Cascar is a very expensive endeavor. But yeah, I can't even imagine what it is today. I mean, that was
insane.
2002,
Yep.
right? So.
Wow. Well, thanks for taking the time. Oh yeah,
Yep.
I can imagine. I don't even remember. It was funny when I was Googling your name and coming up with the questions, and that car came up, and I'm like, I could not figure out where I had seen it before, but I'm like, this car is like ingrained in my memory, and I realized that one of my buddies actually had it as a car. I think somebody built it in iRacing as a regular stock car, and my buddy was like, "Oh, check out this PlayStation car," and I was like, "That looks so familiar," and then I realized it was your car, so that's awesome. Thanks for taking the time tonight, Joe. I really appreciate it. Really appreciate you sharing lots of stories. And Travis, this was a great idea. This is all Travis's idea. I can't even take credit for this. So
it was a great idea. And we had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we sure did. Thanks a bunch, Joe.
No problem. Thank you, guys.
Yeah,
anytime
cheers,
too.
Anytime. Absolutely, we'll catch up. We'll bug you later down the road for sure. Thanks again, Joe.
Not a problem. Thank you.
And the checkered is out on another episode of the Southern Ontario Dirt Show. Be sure to rate, review, and subscribe for future episodes. Connect with us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok at Southern Ontario Dirt Show. Have a question for the show? Email us, southernontariodirtshow@gmail.com. Thanks for supporting local racing in Southern Ontario, and we'll see you at the track.